Elias would later tell the police that they heard the pleas for help and simply walked away. But in the deepest, most honest recesses of his mind, his only regret was that they had not run faster. The decision did not happen all at once. It was a slow, suffocating constriction of instinct that began the moment the forest floor opened up before them. Elias and Julian had been hiking the Bitterroot ridgeline for 6 hours, seeking the kind of isolation that washes away the static of city living. They found it in the form of a jagged fissure, a breathless wound in the granite that looked like the earth had tried to inhale and choked. It was shadowed, roughly 10 feet across, and plunged into a darkness that swallowed the late afternoon sunlight whole. They had stopped to drink water, the sweat cooling uncomfortably on Elias's back, when the sound rose from the abyss. "Help! Please! Is anyone up there?" It was a woman's voice. It was not the shrill, cinematic shriek of a horror movie, but the wet, ragged gasp of someone whose lungs were punctured by exhaustion. It was terrifyingly real. Before Elias could cap his canteen, a second voice joined the first. A child, thin and high-pitched, sobbing a single word over and over. "Mommy, mommy, mommy." Julian, younger and burdened with a heart too big for the wilderness, dropped his pack immediately. "Oh my God!" he breathed, scrambling toward the lip of the fissure. "Hello. We hear you." Elias moved on instinct, his hand shooting out to grab the strap of Julian's backpack, jerking him back from the crumbling edge. "Easy, Jules. The ground is unstable." "Did you hear that? There's a kid down there, Elias." Julian's eyes were wide, panic already dilating his pupils. He struggled against Elias's grip, leaning over the void. "We have to get down there. They sound hurt." Elias stepped closer to the edge, cautious, peering into the gloom. The drop was sheer, vanishing into a black throat of rock. He could not see the bottom, only the jagged teeth of slate jutting out at lethal angles. "We do not have rope, Julian. We have day packs and a first aid kit for blisters, not compound fractures. Please." The woman's voice drifted up again, weaker this time, laced with a gurgling sob. "My leg. I see not move my leg. My baby is cold." The sound twisted a knife in Elias's gut. It was the biological imperative, the ancient wiring in every human brain that commanded protection for the young and the injured. He felt the pull of it, the urge to jump, to slide, to do something. But then he looked at the sky. The sun was dipping below the pine line. The temperature was dropping fast. "We see not go down," Elias said, his voice flat, forcing the logic past the lump in his throat. "If we try to free climb that in the dark, we'll fall. Then there will be 4 people dying in a hole instead of 2. Julian spun around, his face flushed with outrage. "Are you serious? You want to leave them? Listen to her." "I am listening to her," Elias snapped, the stress fraying his composure. "And I am looking at a 100-foot drop with 0 visibility. The ranger station is 5 miles back. We mark the GPS coordinates, we run back, and we bring a SAR team with winches and lights. That is how they survive. They might not have 5 hours," Julian yelled, pointing into the dark. "And we do not have wings," Elias roared back, the silence of the forest shattering around them. The woman's voice stopped abruptly. The child's sobbing ceased. For a second, the silence was absolute, heavy and judgmental. Then the woman spoke again. "Do not leave us. Please. It hurts." Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. The tone had shifted. It was flatter, less ragged, as if the speaker had momentarily forgotten to be in pain. He shook his head, dismissing the thought as paranoia born of adrenaline. He grabbed Julian's shoulder hard. "We are going," Elias commanded, using the tone he used on subordinates at the warehouse. "Now, every second we argue is a second the rescue team is not on their way." Julian looked at the hole, tears in his eyes, then at Elias. He looked like he wanted to swing a fist, but the crushing weight of Elias's logic broke him. He nodded, defeated. "We going to get help." Julian screamed down into the fissure, his voice cracking. "Hold on. Running to the car. We'll be back." Elias turned, checking his compass, desperate to put his back to that hole. He took the first step away, the heavy burden of the choice settling on his shoulders. He had chosen the cold, rational path. He had chosen survival. But as the wind picked up, swirling around the jagged rocks, Elias could not shake the feeling that the silence from the pit was not one of hope, but of waiting. They moved fast, a forced march that bordered on a jog, boots slamming against the hard-packed dirt and pine needles. Elias took point, setting a punishing pace, driven by the guilt nipping at his heels. He kept his eyes on the trail, refusing to look back, refusing to let the image of that black throat slow him down. Julian was lagging a few paces behind, his breathing ragged. He was not looking at the trail. He kept glancing over his shoulder, his head cocked as if trying to catch a fading signal. "Pick it up, Jules," Elias grunted, vaulting over a fallen log. "We lose the light, we lose the speed." "I do not hear them anymore," Julian said, his voice thin. "That S because we a quarter mile out. Save your breath." "No." Julian stopped, turning fully around to face the way they had come. I did not hear them cry when we left. They just stopped." Elias stopped, counting to 3 to control his temper before turning around. "They conserving energy, or they passed out, which is why we need to move." "We should have left a light," Julian muttered, guilt making him irrational. "We should have dropped a glow stick or something. And blinded them? Come on." "I'm going to tell them one last time," Julian said, cupping his hands around his mouth before Elias could stop him. He took a massive breath and bellowed back toward the ridge, his voice echoing through the valley. "We are coming back. Just hold on." The echo rolled away, bouncing off the granite faces of the distant peaks. "Coming back, back, back," and then the forest answered. From the direction of the fissure, distinct and piercing, a voice called out. It was not an echo. It was too loud, too directed. "We are coming back. Just hold on." Elias froze. The hair on his arms stood up so violently it hurt. It was Julian's voice. Not a similar voice, it was Julian's, but the cadence was wrong. It was perfectly flat, devoid of the desperate inflection Julian had just used. It sounded like a digital recording played back through a wet speaker. Julian lowered his hands, his face draining of color. That was an echo. A weird echo. "Echoes do not keep the volume," Elias whispered, his instincts screaming at him to run. "Echoes fade." "Maybe someone else is up there," Julian suggested, though his voice wavered. "Maybe someone heard me and is repeating it? Just hold on." The voice boomed again. "Hold on, hold on, hold on." The repetition was mechanical. The space between the words was identical down to the millisecond. It did not sound like a person shouting. It sounded like a skipping CD, skipping on the syllable on. "That S not a person," Elias said, and for the first time, the cool logic that ruled his life evaporated, replaced by a primal, lizard brain terror. "Julian, move. Now." "Is it mocking me?" Julian took a step back toward the trail, but his eyes were locked on the tree line. "Why does it sound like me? I do not care. Move." Elias grabbed Julian's packstrap and shoved him forward. They began to jog again, but the rhythm of the forest had changed. The birds had gone silent. The wind had died. The only sound was their boots and the heavy thudding of their hearts. Then came the sound that broke Julian. "Mommy, mommy, help, leg, cold." It was the child's voice again, but it was coming from behind them. Not from the distant ridge, but closer, much closer, maybe 200 yards back through the trees. Julian stumbled, catching himself on a birch tree. "How?" He wheezed. "How did they get out? They had broken legs. We would have heard a helicopter." "They did not get out," Elias hissed, pulling a hunting knife from his belt. A useless gesture that made him feel slightly less naked. "Whatever is back there." It was not a woman and a child. But I heard them. You heard a lure, Julian. You heard bait. Pleas. The woman's voice shrieked, slicing through the air. It was close now. 50 yards? It sounded impossibly wide, as if the speaker's throat was twice the size of a human's. The scream did not taper off. It cut abruptly into a wet, clicking sound. Click, 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 click. My baby is cold, the voice said, but this time it was in Elias's voice. It was a deep, baritone rumble, mimicking the woman's words but using Elias's pitch. My baby is cold. My baby is cold. Julian whimpered, his hands clapping over his ears. The horrific realization crashed down on them both. They had not left victims to die. They had walked away from a dinner bell, and now the diner was coming to them. Run, Elias breathed. Do not look back. Just run. They bolted. The trail was treacherous, a maze of roots and shale, but they sprinted with the reckless abandonment of prey. Behind them, the sounds changed again. The mimicry dissolved into a sound that defied physics. A rapid, rhythmic slapping, like wet slabs of meat striking stone, moving with terrifying velocity. It was the sound of something climbing, something scuttling, something that moved through the dense underbrush faster than any man could run. The sun had fully vanished, leaving the woods in a gray, spectral twilight that distorted distance and depth. Elias's lungs were burning, his legs pumping with leaden heaviness, but the adrenaline kept the pain distant. They reached a narrow switchback, a choke point where the trail hugged a cliff face. Elias risked a glance back. In the dim light, catching the last of the ambient glow, he saw it. It was not a wolf or a bear. It was a pale, elongated blur weaving through the pines. It moved on 4 limbs, but the geometry was all wrong. Knees bending backward, torso stretched like pulled taffy. It was low to the ground, flowing over fallen logs like liquid. Faster! Elias screamed, pushing Julian ahead of him. I see a knot. Julian gasped, stumbling. My ankle! Just hold on. The thing shrieked from the darkness behind them. It was Julian's voice again, amplified to a deafening volume. We are coming back. The psychological assault was worse than the physical threat. It was using their own promises against them, weaponizing their empathy. They rounded a bend and hit a deadfall, a massive oak tree that had come down in a recent storm, blocking the path completely. It was a tangle of branches and trunk, 6 feet high. Over! Go over! Elias shouted. Julian scrambled up the bark, slipping, his fingernails tearing. Elias shoved him from behind, hoisting him up. Julian tumbled over the other side, landing hard in the dirt. Elias vaulted after him, snagging his jacket on a broken branch, ripping the fabric. He hit the ground and spun around, knife raised, expecting the pale horror to be right on top of them. But the trail behind them was empty. Silence rushed back in, ringing in their ears. Where is it? Julian whispered, huddled on the ground, clutching his twisted ankle. Did we lose it? Elias scanned the trees. Nothing. No movement. No snapping twigs. Just the oppressive, watching woods. It was right there, he murmured. It was right on our heels. Maybe it's not climb? Julian offered, hope making him stupid. Maybe the tree blocked it? Elias shook his head. It climbed 100-foot sheer rock wall to get out of that hole, Julian. A tree is nothing. Then he realized. The silence. The creature had not stopped because it was blocked. It had stopped because it did not need to chase them anymore. Above. The realization hit Elias like a physical blow. He slowly tilted his head back, looking up into the canopy of the ancient pines towering over the trail. High above, straddling 2 thick branches, the pale shape hung inverted. It was hairless, its skin the color of a maggotous belly, slick with some kind of secretion. It had no eyes, just smooth, translucent skin where a face should be. But it had a mouth that split the head nearly in 2, lined with rows of needle-thin, translucent teeth. It was not looking at them because it could not see. Its head was cocked to the side, vibrating slightly. It was listening to their heartbeats. Elias stopped breathing. He signaled Julian to freeze, but it was too late. Julian looked up, saw the nightmare suspended 20 feet above them, and let out a strangled gasp of pure terror. The creature's head snapped toward the sound. "Mommy," the creature whispered. But it was not the child's voice anymore. It was a sound that churned Elias's stomach, the sound of bones snapping and wet tearing. It was mimicking the sound of eating. It dropped. Elias did not think. He tackled Julian. They hit the dirt hard, rolling away just as the creature slammed into the earth where they had been standing a second ago. The impact was heavy, like a sack of cement, kicking up a cloud of dust and pine needles. The creature shrieked. A sound of pure, oscillating static that made Elias's teeth ache, and lashed out with a long, spindly arm. The claws, 3 distinct hooks of bone, slashed the air inches from Elias's face. "The car! Go!" Elias roared, kicking the creature in what should have been its ribs. Felt like kicking a bag of wet gravel. The thing did not even flinch, but the impact gave them a second of separation. They scrambled up and ran. The trailhead was close now, maybe 200 yards. They could see the glint of the moonlight on the windshield of Elias's SUV through the thinning trees. The creature did not run. It galloped, a horrifying, loping gait that closed the distance instantly. "My leg! I see not move my leg!" The creature mocked, its voice booming around them, throwing its voice so it seemed to come from the left, then the right, trying to herd them. It was playing with them. Elias reached into his pocket, his fingers closing around his car keys. He fumbled, nearly dropping them, his thumb mashing the unlock button. Chirp, chirp. The headlights of the SUV flashed ahead, cutting through the gloom. The sudden burst of light seemed to confuse the creature. It skidded to a halt, shielding its eyeless face with a pale arm, hissing like a steam pipe. "It hates the light," Julian screamed, limping toward the car. "Get in! Get in!" They threw themselves at the vehicle. Elias yanked the driver's side door open and dove in. Julian scrambled into the passenger seat. Elias slammed the door and locked it just as a pale blur slammed into the side of the car. The SUV rocked violently on its suspension. The metal shrieked as claws dragged down the door panel. Julian was screaming, curling into a ball in the footwell. Elias jammed the key into the ignition and twisted. The engine roared to life. He threw the gear shift into drive and stomped on the gas. The car surged forward, tires spinning on the gravel before finding traction. They fishtailed onto the access road, dust billowing behind them. "Is it following? Is it following?" Julian sobbed, peering into the side mirror. Elias checked the rear view. The red glow of the taillights illuminated the trail behind them. The creature was there, standing in the middle of the road. It was not chasing. It was standing on its hind legs, tall and gaunt, watching them leave. As the distance grew, Elias rolled down his window an inch, just enough to hear. Through the rushing wind and the roar of the engine, he heard it one last time. "Help! Please! Is anyone up there?" It was his own voice. Perfect. Identical. Replaying the moment of their first hesitation. Elias rolled the window up, his hands shaking so hard he could barely steer. He drove fast, far exceeding the speed limit for the winding mountain roads. He did not slow down until they hit the paved highway, the artificial orange glow of streetlights finally washing away the blue-black terror of the woods. Julian sat in the passenger seat, staring at his hands, silent. The tears had dried on his face. "Leah,"